Hey, friend. Welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. I am your host and fellow worthy warrior, Danielle Damrell. On this show, we are creating space for genuine connection by unifying women of all ages, backgrounds, and experiences. So grab your favorite drink and get ready to listen as we take a deep dive into our stories, making sure to honor and protect them in the process. We will also uncover the threads of creative processing that have already played a part in each of our lives. When we know how to utilize this as a skill, we can continue growing into the joy-filled, triumphant women we are created to be. You are created worthy. Hello, welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. Today, I am joined by another worthy warrior, Myrna Atha. Myrna is driven by decisions. Growing up in a small city in Canada, she always felt like there was more in the world for her to discover. She truly believes that decisions, not conditions, determine your destiny. Growing up, she watched as others had wonderful people that took notice of them, took them under their wing, so to speak. And she often wondered why no one had taken notice of her. She recognized very early that she wanted a mentor. She knew that one's chances of success in life and business increase greatly by having the right person guiding you, being your example, and offering genuine life and spiritual guidance. She often wondered why no one had ever taken interest in her future. Her parents never had a conversation with her about what she wanted to be when she grew up, if she wanted to go to college, or even just learn certain valuable skills. If she had dreams or goals, that was not something that was ever discussed. She felt like she was at a disadvantage because she never had a mentor. After many years of quiet reflection, she figured it out and now serves other people in the way she herself desired. Myrna is the embodiment of true servant leadership. She sees the potential in people and offers support and guidance to help them step into the lives that they are created to live. She guides others towards abundance of heart, mind, and finances. She loves to share what unique decisions led her to uncover the destiny and the life that she fully lives out today. I had the honor of meeting Myrna during an event earlier this year, and we connected instantly. Love and acceptance exuded from this wonderful woman in a powerful way, and I knew there was something unique about the way she was able to connect with everyone around her. Her confidence and decisive nature was something that I immediately admired and quickly determined that I wanted to invite her on this podcast because those are learned qualities that so many of us struggle with. It is such an honor to be sitting with such a successful, wise, and genuinely kind soul. Myrna, thank you so much for joining us today on the Created Worthy podcast. I can't wait to hear more about your real life story.
Oh my gosh, Danielle. Well, I am super excited to be here with your audience. And first of all, I just have to tell you, I love the name of your podcast because truly we are all created worthy. So, what a great place for us to start.
Thank you. Yes, I struggled with the name of this podcast. I had a few different options. One of them was like, you are me and I am you. There was like 4 or 5 different ones, but this was the one I had a group of people vote on like which one resonates with you most. And this is the one they chose. And then it still took me like a season and a half for me to really process what created worthy meant for me and for this audience and for my intention on this show. So that's such a sweet compliment. Thank you. So I would love to just start with a little bit about where you're from, obviously Canada, but just tell us a little bit about the town you grew up in and what life looked like for you growing up.
Sounds great. Well, you know what? I have to smile just as I even begin to share because I really grew up, I think, in a great environment in that it was pretty, pretty low key. I mean, Regina, Saskatchewan is where I was born, and it is a little bit north of, let's say, we used to go to Montana all the time, or North Dakota. And there was, gosh, maybe about 100,000 people in the city, at the time. And it's a rural community. So it's really all about farming.
Okay.
And we weren't farmers. My dad drove a cement truck, And during the winter time, when of course not a lot of building goes on in those cold climates, my uncle owned a company. He had like semi trucks, and they would drive steel down here to the US. And my dad would drive for my uncle, or he would drive cabs in the wintertime. And my mom, she worked full time as well. She was a secretary in a little business that they did kitchen remodels. So it was pretty humble, working parents and grandparents. And, we spent holidays with all the cousins and birthdays and all those kinds of
Yeah.
things. So it was, I guess I feel like saying it was wholesome,
Okay. Yeah.
Some,
Like simple home. Was it like homestead?
yes.
Were you homeschooled?
No, no, I don't think
Okay.
homeschooling was even a term back then. I think you
uh,
stay home if you were bad. Then
oh,
you get
yeah.
homeschooled.
You're like, that's a punishment.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, what part of your childhood would you say was the most like impactful looking back? Was it like your early childhood years, your teenage years? Like, what part of what you went through as a child do you still see threads of now as you are now Myrna Atha?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. Gosh. My I have a sister, and she is 7 years older than me. So I kind of grew up as the little bratty sister that she had to babysit
Are
and
you the
take care of.
youngest?
I am the youngest, yeah.
Okay.
And I remember a lot of happy times in that we did quite a bit as a family, but I was kind of the boy that my father never had. So part of what I always remember is a lot of time spent with my father, because we would work on cars together. I did the yard work with my dad. I did archery. I became a dog trainer. I
Wow.
got race car sets and train sets for for Christmas. That's kind of what we would get. And it kind of carried on, because I used to say I'm a guy girl. Have you ever heard that term, like a
Yeah.
girl, guy
Like
girl?
like a tomboy.
Total tomboy, total tomboy.
Okay.
And I mean, even in high school, I took motor mechanics. So for 4 years, so most females take, home ec. I took motor mechanics.
I love
Which
that.
is so funny. But I'm a total car buff, so that definitely carries on today. And it's kind of perfect, since I married a guy who could own a restaurant. So like, he's in the kitchen and I'm in the garage. No, he's in the kitchen and I'm the sous chef, if you will. But what I really remember, and what really, I guess, helped mold me, honestly, is that my sister was not a good girl.
Mm.
And so I saw things as a very young child I probably shouldn't have seen. And because of that, and because of me seeing my parents react to that,
Right.
and again, we're talking, a lot of years ago, because I'm 56 now. So, and she's, 7 years older, but when she was a teenager, she was a bad girl. She got into all kinds of trouble. And I was so afraid of the wrath of my parents, because I saw that. And I just wanted to be like the perfect child. I never wanted to get into trouble. I always wanted to be a great student. I always wanted to do what my parents told me, because of the fear. You know what I mean? Like, so it wasn't
Mhm.
necessarily a positive thing at the time. But I so didn't want to grow up and be like my sister, because of all the trouble and grief that she caused my parents. So that is definitely
That definitely probably plays into your decisiveness. Like, no,
all.
I'm going to make my own decisions.
Yes.
I'm not going to be influenced by what's around me. Yeah.
No, 100%. I've excuse me, I've always been my own person, and been strong in that, because I know, and God knows, I'm a really good person. So I really
Right.
stand on that.
Oh, I love that. I think that that's such a strong quality to have and to know about yourself, because then you can carry that into everything that you do and be like, you know what? I'm self assured. I
Mhm.
know what I am called to. I know that I have a distinct purpose that I'm going to carry out in life. So, just pulling back from your bio earlier, you talked a lot about wanting a mentor.
Mhm.
Can you share with us a little bit about your experience? Like, do you remember in childhood being like, oh, that person has a mentor? I want one of those.
I do. I remember, being in grade school and my best friend had a person in her life. If I'm remembering right, it was an aunt. And this aunt, I mean, we just thought she was the coolest thing since sliced bread. I don't even remember
Right.
how old she was or whatever. I just remember like she was, the Barbie doll, right? She looked perfect, she acted perfect, she had a great job. And my best friend would always say, "Oh my gosh, Auntie showed me this, or we did that, or we went shopping, we had our nails done." It was just even that person that they spent time with. And I think, again, because of the difference in age of my sister and also my mom working full time, I was what we referred to back then as a latchkey kid.
Okay.
So, right, I would come home from school. And again, because I was the good little girl, I would, tidy up the house. I would, get my homework done. I would even start dinner, if I knew what I was
Wow.
supposed to do.
Yeah.
And a really funny part about that is, oh my gosh, I'm having all these great memories. Is it's shocking that I didn't become an interior designer because literally, and I'm talking in grade school, my parents would come home and we had a wee little house, but I would move all the furniture around. Like the living room would look totally different, or I would completely change my bedroom. Like the bed would be on a different wall. I would do this stuff all the time. It's just, again, kind of funny, but I do love doing interior design work. I have fun
Yeah.
all the
Now
time.
you do that with your own home, right?
I do
Yeah.
exactly. But it was little things like that where I just would do things on my own. And again, because of I had such a good gauge of right and wrong, I suppose. I would make good decisions. And that's why, years ago I read this story, Danielle, and it kind of goes down that same path. It was about two twins. Obviously, they were raised by the same parents, right?
Right.
And later in life, they were actually interviewed. And the one son, well, he was the head of a Fortune 500 company. He was married. He had two kids. He had a beautiful home. He looked and was very successful, and people admired him. And when they interviewed the twin brother, well, he'd been in jail numerous times. He had kids from different women. He went down a wrong path. He had been involved in substance abuse. And the interviewer asked them the same question at the end of the interview. And the question was, what do you think most influenced you? And they both said, our alcoholic father. So why do you have two siblings, and in this case twins, who grew up in exactly the same circumstance, and they went in completely opposite directions?
And that is so, so common. I read an article recently that said no two kids had the same parents. Every child has a unique set of experiences.
Mhm.
And then the changing emotional state of parents matters more than where they are physically. And
Right.
that's like, I mean, I have two siblings, or I have three siblings, but two that I grew up with for the first 5 years, but there's a 14 and 16-year age gap between us. So the experiences in childhood that I had was completely different than the experiences in childhoods that they had.
Mhm.
And that my brother and sister are only 2 years apart in age, but they had completely different experiences, even though they have the same parents, just like you were saying. I think that's a really good point to bring up and just talk about is like it really it really does matter who you are as a person. Like
Yes.
how a child grows up, we can do our best as a parent. I have a 7-year-old daughter, so I'm trying my best. But but a lot of it has to do with like where we're at mentally, physically, emotionally. If we're dealing with alcoholism, then that's going to affect every child so differently. Did
Mm.
you see that in your experience with your sister and you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I would say to my parents, because they were really hard on me too. And there was no need to be, because again, I would like forget it. I would never step out of line. And I would say, I'm not her. And she would say, she's not me. Like, go easier on her. And that's kind of where I started to realize later in life with the whole mentor thing, that one of the things that I started looking at is that my life was my mentor. That was part of it. And I realized that my experiences, exactly with what you're saying, Danielle, my experiences really were mentoring me. It's just I didn't have that physical structure of a person, a live human
Right.
being telling me. I was paying attention. So my attention to my environment and my circumstances helped me to make really good decisions in my life. Now, and trust me, I haven't made all great decisions. Okay, a lot of crap ones along the
You're like,
way.
I am the perfect example of a human being.
Correct. But really, I mean, we all get to decide, don't we? Every single day, things we're going to do or not do, how we're going to react or how we're going to act. I mean, we get to do
Exactly.
that.
And as adults, that's something that I've been working through with my therapist for the last few years, is like, because I very similarly, I had a longing for a mentor. At the time, I didn't have the word mentor, but that's what I wanted. I thought it was more of like a mom figure for me. But one thing that my therapist constantly has me do is she's like, what part of you is coming up? Is it your childhood's, like, is it your young child self? Is it your teenage self? And then how did you need somebody to be present with you in those moments? Like, what was missing? And now as an adult, I can go back, I can give myself that kind of attention when those parts of me come up, so that I can then be like, this is how I wanted to be. This is how I wanted to be loved. This is how I wanted to be heard. This is how I wanted to be valued.
Mhm.
And that's like a continual life thing, right? Like we're all going to be doing that all throughout life. Hopefully we have the skills and the tools to be able to do that effectively and in a healthy way. Um, but sometimes mentorship really does come from within.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does. Well, and the funny part of my sister and I is also that she actually led me to God.
Really?
Right. So, all those years
Yeah,
of,
tell me about that story.
hey, I wasn't even thinking about this, but all that you're sharing and I'm sharing is bringing it up in my memories. And that, there came a time where my sister moved away, and then she got married to a wonderful man, praise God. And I watched her from afar because she lived in a different province, but you're obviously, we're a small family, we're in touch. And I really saw her start to change her life. And she started to share things about the Lord with me. And I craved that because I was not brought up in a home where that was talked about. I mean, we would go to church at Christmas and Easter. Like that
Yeah.
was kind of the thing, right? I did go to Sunday school, I remember, for a little bit as a kid, but I barely remember any of that. And so I was really on a quest to have a foundation too, because
Right.
I didn't understand that. I had different family members, like aunts and uncles, different people following different faiths or religions. Um, and from what I knew, none of them really made sense to me. Like I didn't really get it. So I was also in my teen years, and then I'm going to say really early 20s, seeking something and wanting to understand and knowing there was something bigger, but what path to go down. So as I was watching my sister and watching her life change, and I used to say, I love my sister, but I don't like her. I used to say that all the time, which now sounds so harsh to me, but I started thinking
I'm not gonna lie, I say that to my husband about my child sometimes, and sometimes about him. I love you always, but I like you sometimes.
exactly. Well, and then I started wanting to, I guess, get to know her, Danielle, because how you don't really know each other growing up. And I saw from a distance this life that she was creating for herself. And so I actually moved to the province that she was in, because I wanted what she had. I wanted to understand that. And so I started asking her a lot of questions. Went to church with her a handful of times, and I was like, this feels right. I learned this is funny. I learned how to pray. I learned that I just needed to have a conversation with God,
Mhm.
and that no matter what I did, he would love me.
Yeah,
The imperfect person that I am,
right.
he knew my heart. And so how cool is that, that all that craziness as a kid and all the things, as I said, that I saw and experienced that were so scary for me with her and my parents, that she ended up being the person leading me to Christ. I mean,
I think that's how God works sometimes.
I think so too.
And and he does that for a very purpose-filled reason. Without those experiences, obviously, I'm sure if you could go back in life, you would probably take those away from your experience, but without those, you might not realize your need for a savior.
100%.
Yeah, that is such a powerful story, and it's really incredible that your sister was the one to be like, "Hey, this is faith for me now. This is what's changing me." Did she, like, have a conversation with you about, "This is what I've done. Do you want to learn more about God?"
Yeah, she did. She didn't necessarily say this is what I've done, but because I was paying attention once again, and I saw the difference in her decision making and going from being this, bad teenager to, finding a wonderful man and then God coming into her life and her three little girls. Um, that really spoke to me, that made me then ask questions. And it was really interesting. I remember the day I called her, and this is only within, let's see, I'm trying to remember, I'm going to say it was like within 4 or 5 months of me moving to where she lived. I called her and I said, I'm ready. Like, I know there's this prayer you're supposed to say. You're talking about the sinner's prayer. I was like, I'm ready. I want to do it tonight. She said, okay, we're going to come over. What time can we come over? And so, 7 o'clock. So her and Randy, my brother-in-law, and the three little girls showed up at my apartment, and we talked, and she showed me some scriptures in the Bible. And then I just remember like yesterday, like, I'm ready. I want to say it. I want to say it. And so that all happened. But this is the crazy thing. So that all happened. And, we were praising God, and it was all fantastic. And then they left, and they were obviously all excited, and they're getting in the car. And my brother-in-law thought all three of the kids were in the car, but one of them wasn't completely in the car, and he backed out over her foot and broke her foot. So you and I
Oh
both
my
know that that
gosh.
was Satan going, "Oh no, you're not taking her now." But God took me, right? And
Wow.
so she broke her foot, but she was actually okay. It could have been so much worse. But
Yeah, good thing it was, I mean, as bad as this is to say, I'm glad it was just her foot.
what?
Yeah.
Exactly. And then it was so funny because this was all actually around Halloween as well. And I worked in a mall. And so I'm telling you, the next day when I walked into that mall, because of course there's decorations up in all the stores, I started looking around and realizing what that was all about. And I remember getting in my car that day, and the radio was on. And all of a sudden I heard the lyrics and thought, what am I listening to? I mean, it was just this shower of goodness and faith.
I know
And
it was an awakening. Yeah.
what an awakening. Oh my goodness. And also at the same time, I had already met Mark, who's my husband, but we worked together. There was none of that. No, none of
Yeah.
that.
Okay, I get it. I'm
Get it,
picking
get
that up.
And but I knew he was a Christian. And without a doubt, God put him in my path,
Oh,
because if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't be married to him today. Because
wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people always ask me, I mean, gosh, we've been married for 28 and a half years now. We have an amazing life that we've completely designed and made decisions to create together. They're like, you and Mark have this great marriage. Like, what's your secret? Super easy. God's number one in both of our lives.
Yeah, he's that third strand in your braid
100%.
of marriage. Yeah, go back a little bit and tell me about how you and Mark met.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Always like a funny story, right? So you have no idea what you're asking.
No, I don't. I'm excited.
So I worked for Kitty Shoes, and Mark worked for Kitty Shoes in different provinces. And he was actually a manager, and I was an assistant manager, again, in different provinces. And every year there was a managers meeting. So all the managers would fly to Ontario, to Toronto, to this big meeting. And every year the salesperson of the year, if they were not yet a manager, they were invited to attend. And that was me. So I went to this big conference, and every one award after another, this Myrna Atha guy, like walking across the stage. We used to joke about him. He looked like Alex P. Keaton. Like, he was like the little guy with the tie and the suit. And I mean, he was completely opposite of my growing up environment. His dad's a pastor. I mean, forget it,
Oh,
right? So anyways,
totally different lives.
totally different life. I was like, I met him, and again, he's this big award winner, and they said he was on the fast track to move to New York City and all this stuff. And I thought, oh my gosh, that guy needs a beer.
He needs to sit down.
Like, yeah, exactly. He needs to loosen that tie up. So that was my first experience of meeting Mark. And then he got transferred and promoted out as a district sales manager. I got transferred and promoted as a manager in his territory because they called me and they said, listen, we know you're really ready to get out there as a district sales manager as well, but there's one more person we want you to work under for a few months before we take a look at promoting you. And I was like, well, who is that? They're like, Myrna Atha. I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to be kidding me. That's square. I was like, he wore those little shirts with the alligators on them.
Oh
And
my
I mean,
gosh.
I am telling you, like, so funny. I can't wait for you to get to know Mark, because you're going to laugh,
Yes.
because you know this story now. And I was like, oh, brother, you're kidding. So truth be known, I was terrified because he was like the star, the perfect employee, the perfect person. And I was like me, like this, again, very flawed person. And that's when I asked to, I mean, they were moving me, and that's where my sister lived. So that's how that story ties together. So
Whoa.
I went to work, and I worked, in that territory with Mark for, I think it was 5 months before they came and offered me a promotion. And that's how I also knew he was a Christian. I mean, he was very faith-based. We had, again, obviously God put him in my life as my boss, and started creating that community of other Christian people around me that really, I was watching, I was paying attention, Danielle. I'm very observant.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
God gave
I
me.
believe that.
Mhm.
So tell me about your first date. How did that go? Did he ask you out? Did you ask him out?
Okay, so that's really awkward as well. So all these awkward moments. So it was because we became the best of friends. When I got promoted, we had the same job, but I was a district sales manager for Lady Foot Locker, and he was a district sales manager for Kitty Shoes. It was all the Woolworth Corporation. So I didn't get transferred out of that province or that city. They kept me there, but now we're equals.
Okay.
So then we became the best of friends, and we were, dating other people, with other people, all that. And we would hang out and go out like as foursomes. And it was always be, Mark and I chit-chatting, and we had so much in common. And of course, because we weren't dating, there was no secrets. There was
Right.
just us. Here I am,
You
right?
could just build a friendship.
We built this friendship. And then he went through a separation. And then like a year or so later, I was no longer with my long-term relationship. And we went out for dinner one night, and we're talking about all these crazy dates we were going on, and the people that we were with and all this stuff. And it's like, we looked at each other different, and it was super awkward, like super awkward. And I remember we left the restaurant. We were actually, we weren't Regina, we were in Edmonton. It's there's Parliament buildings in Canada. And so we went for a walk around the Parliament buildings, and we were goofing off in this fountain out front, and the police came. Like, what are you doing in the fountain? We were just laughing and just being silly. But it was just an awkward, weird night. And so I was so excited because I thought, oh my gosh, like those, those tingly feelings, like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. The
And,
butterflies.
and I was so, but I was so weirded out. So the next day he calls me and he said, I think we need to get together and have a conversation. I'm like, yes. I was so excited because I thought I'm thinking he had the same tingly feelings too.
Yeah.
So I met him after work. He was now in real estate, actually. And we're sitting at this restaurant and he's like super serious and being weird. And he said, I think we had this moment last night, but you haven't been out of your relationship for very long. And I don't want to be
Rebound.
the rebound guy and all that. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like rebound guy? You're the guy. Like, we're the best friends. We should be together. Like, this should be our future. And he was like having none of it. He's like, I don't want to be that guy. And I don't want to lose your friendship. I was dying 1,000 deaths because I thought, oh my gosh, God has placed him
Yeah.
in front of me. And like, we should just probably go get married or something. So anyways, he got over that within a couple days. I was like, no, 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 no. I'm good. I'm good. I don't need any more time. And this is where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So we actually were engaged so that was in the fall of 93. We got engaged on New Year's Eve of 93 and we had
Wow.
no money. So he made a ring out of pipe cleaners, those fuzzy little pipe cleaners.
Yes.
Yeah, and he proposed to me and he figured if she says yes with a pipe cleaner, I'm doing good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. How freaking cute is that?
I know, it's crazy. And what was funny is his car was in the shop and he had this little Toyota Tercel like rental car because his car was being fixed. So here we are in this like crappy little car out in the cold. We were on this hill in Edmonton, and he proposes with this pipe cleaner. I couldn't have been more excited, right?
Oh,
And then we got married in June of 94 that same year, and we started our business in August of 94.
wow. That's like back to back to back to back to back. So
Yeah.
yeah, tell me about starting a business with your husband, with
Well,
your new husband who had been
yeah,
your boss and then your coworker
right.
and then your best friend.
I
So much
know
history there.
there is. Well, and again, that's another question people say to us, like, how do you two work together? Like, I could never work with my spouse. But if you think about it, I mean, we started working together without being a couple. So we've actually worked together for like most of our lives, and
Yeah.
I will tell you this, neither one of us tells each other what to do. Like if he was to ever say to me, okay, Myrna, like, what's your schedule today? Or are you doing this? I'd be like, are you out of your mind? Okay? Like,
We
don't
are
ask me.
equals.
We are equals. As long as we both get
Yeah.
done what we need to get done, it doesn't matter when we get it done, as long as we get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're both very goal focused and motivated. And that's the other thing that I realized growing up is that I saw people set goals and achieve them. And I thought, goals, that's kind of a cool thing. I remember looking in a dictionary, like the old fashioned way, to what a goal was. And oh, this is a crazy story, Danielle. So again, this is a few years back. Because my mom and dad never talked about goals or anything with me. Again, it's just something I kind of saw and went and figured it out myself. I was training to run a half marathon, and it was actually Christmas time. And my mom was in town visiting, and I knew I wanted to get up Christmas Day and I wanted to go run 9 miles because I knew if I could run 9 miles, I'd be able to do the half marathon and I'd be okay, which was coming up in about a week and a half. So we got in the car the day before on the 24th of December, and we drove to map out like where I need to run to get in my 9 miles. And my mom was in the back seat and she said, Myrna, why are you doing this? I remember laughing, and Mark started laughing. I said, that's a really good question because I never ran. Like I've always gone to the gym and worked out and done things, but I always said I don't run because if I run, I'll break out in a rash because I'm allergic to it.
That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, never been a runner, never had any desire to be a runner, but I had this new friend of mine that challenged me to go run this dang PF Chang half marathon. So I was like, oh brother. I mean,
And were you still in Canada? So it's
no, I was
December
here.
in Canada. Okay. So
No,
you
I
had
was
already
actually
moved.
here.
Okay.
Yeah, here in Scottsdale. And because she challenged me and I'm always up for a challenge, when I wasn't going to back out because I'm very decisive, I said, okay. And she was a runner. So I thought, dang it, her name was Becky. So I decided that not only was I going to run the dang half marathon, I was going to cross that finish line in front of her if it was the last thing I did. So back to my mom. So my mom's in the back seat. She says, Myrna, why are you doing this? And I'm laughing. I said, that's a really good question. So I said, well, Becky challenged me, so I'm doing this. And I said, you know what? Quite honestly, Mom, it's become a goal of mine. And she got really quiet. And she said, a goal. She said, Myrna, I don't think I've ever had one of those. Danielle.
Wow.
And she said, can you explain to me? So thank God I'm in the front seat. Tears are falling down my face.
You're like, this makes so much sense.
I'm going to start crying now.
Mm.
I just remember trying to breathe through it and not let her hear the tears. And I explained to her what a goal is. And she said, that's so fun. I'm so glad that you're doing that. You can do anything. And you know what? Oh boy. My mom never had those conversations with me or my dad, but my mom was always my biggest fan. She did always tell me, not how, but she told me I could. And she always told me that I was a good girl and that she was proud of me and all those things. And again, that was a real lesson for me that I had made a decision to have goals in my life. And that, again, I didn't necessarily have to have a mentor in my life. And this was a moment that I realized, again, that my life had mentored me to learn and to make those decisions.
And really God, right? Like those are the moments where that's God showing up through you.
Yeah, that was such a special moment with my mom. I'll never forget it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That is such a powerful moment. I can't even imagine sitting there and like describing to your parent what a goal means when that's really something that you desired your whole life, was to set goals and to accomplish them and to know how to set them. But then to realize that she didn't even know what that meant, I'm sure that just like so many emotions.
I never thought of it. I never thought about it.
Yeah.
Oh
my gosh.
Yeah, wild.
That is wild. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I would really like to hear about, okay, so you accomplished the marathon, the half marathon,
yes,
right?
and by the way, I crossed the finish line.
You did it. You hit that goal.
Now it was only by like a couple of feet, but my foot went over first.
You won. That counts.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, at this point, was this around the same time that you and Mark had decided to get into business together as well? Or was this a few years later?
No, much later.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, much later. And, for Mark and I, what was going on with us and why we decided to start, getting our business together was, it was 1994. We were going through a terrible recession in Canada and brand new married. And my car was parked 3 blocks away. I mean, that's the truth of it. And not because we did anything wrong. I mean, it was a recession. The banks were taking homes back. Mark was a realtor. I was in retail. Nobody was walking into the mall spending their money on stuff they didn't need. And we thought, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so we went looking for, I guess in today's terms, you'd call it a side gig or a side hustle.
Yeah.
And we looked at over 300 businesses before choosing. So we didn't just like see a shiny object and go, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And of course we didn't have any money. So we joke, we say we had to find something we could start on a shoestring budget. 'Cause that's the only
Yeah.
thing we
No,
had.
for real.
Yeah. And then we just, we really figured out, again, based on some good decision making, the things that we needed to have in place, to, start something that we knew based on our efforts we would have a win. So what I find nowadays, because of course we're going through all that again right now in the world,
Yeah.
we're in a recession, inflation hasn't been as high in 40 years, credit card debt has never been higher, and that's because people are paying their bills on their credit cards. So right now, we are loving mentoring others and helping them make a good decision as to what they can do that complements their current career or business, that can really alleviate that financial stress. Because, I'll tell you something, when you don't have financial stress, you really get to be the person that God intended you to be, because
Mm.
financial stress is scary,
It's really scary.
really
Yeah.
scary. Yeah,
Cause I mean, the reality is I know nobody really wants to talk about the money side of things, but
right.
when you don't have it, everything is kind of up in the air, like in our tangible lives, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, I think that the fact that you now, with your husband, stepped into a business where you get to go ahead and seek people, find them, mentor them, help them to make good decisions, use the strengths that you have and your ability to set accomplishable goals, and then help other people to do that same thing for themselves. Like, what a beautiful, uh, complete turn in your life from having literally nothing
Yeah.
to being able to show other people how to live their lives in abundance.
Yeah. And I really believe that, again, God has put us in this place to do that. So we can run alongside people and say, listen, we've done it. Let us show you the way and do it
Mhm.
with you. Not I've done it. I wrote a book and now go figure it out. Like
Yeah.
that stuff drives me crazy.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
Yes,
Um,
for sure.
we want to dive in and dig in and help people grow in themselves, and have choices, because when your bills are paid every month and you got that little bit extra, man, you really get to put a smile on your face. You really get to do things that are important to you.
Right.
And there's nothing better than having choices. Not having choices and being under the gun with things, that's not good for anybody, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, you
um
feel so limited
oh
and
yeah,
out of
yeah.
control of your own life, which we have control over lives and we have to remember the ways that we do have control. I think that's the power of mentorship now, especially in adulthood, where you can choose who you want to speak into your life. You can choose who you allow to speak into your life.
Well, you
And
know
then you
what?
can discern that.
Yes, and Danielle, that's such a great point, because I think the other thing, I guess, if I could say there's three things that I really learned, it would be, number one, that life is a mentor and that setting goals is really important. But the other thing is who are you surrounding yourself with?
Yeah.
So I'm always looking to surround myself with people that are smarter and richer, not dumber and poorer. Okay. So I want to elevate my game. I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I'm a lifetime learner, and I
Hmm.
I want to continue that. And I got to tell you, when I listened to your own podcast sharing your story, I learned so much about you and about your character. And I thought, holy smokes, girlfriend. Um, Now I love you even more, and I want to know
Oh.
you more, and I want to do whatever I can, even though it's just a little bit, just to positively, um I don't know if the word's influence, but contribute to your growth.
I will say you already are a mentor to me. Like I've learned from you just by the little bit of time that we have been able to spend together, how you carry yourself, the way you present, the way that you reach out and are intentional about connecting. Those things are all mentoring me. So I am so grateful for you. And
Awesome.
I you're so, so, so kind. And I thought it was so cool that the quote that you told me that was your favorite is always be kind. Can you take me back for a moment to when that became your favorite quote or when you knew that kindness was a core quality that you needed to exude?
Mhm. That word specifically has always been important to me because people can be so unkind,
Mhm.
even with their thoughts. And I think it's kind of started there for me because it always well, it doesn't sit well with me when I hear people speak not well of others.
Mhm.
And I always think if I'm listening to it, I might as well be participating. Well, I am participating in it. Even if I say nothing,
Right.
that is
So
participation,
easy to get into
right?
that.
It's participating if I'm listening to it. And it's not kind. It's not kind of for me to do that. So that's what really kind of, and it's funny how you asked that question. I never thought about it before, but that is really what I guess helped me feel that that was and has been for so long my word. Because I need to remind myself of it as well. Because
Right.
sometimes, right? Sometimes you're not.
No, where I mean, it would be
Jeez,
we would be lying to everyone if we said that every human or there is a any human being on this planet who is kind 100% of the time.
time, right. Well,
Not
and you know
possible.
what? And you never know what's going on behind closed doors and
Mhm.
whatnot, right? A funny thing happened to me a couple months ago. I was paying for my groceries. I was at Safeway, and there was this little old lady in front of me, and she's got the change purse, right? She's, and of course, she's trying to pull out her exact change to pay for her groceries, and the cashier was,
Huffin.
and I mean, I just wanted to smack her, to be honest with you, but so I'm thinking to myself what I'm going to say to her when the little lady is done and moves away, because I'm not going to cause a scene with the sweet little grandma there. So I want to smack her, but I know that that's not the way to do it.
You're like,
It's
that's not very kind.
not very kind, Myrna. So when I got up to her, and of course she's like, "Hi, how are you?" But she's not looking at me or engaging. She's just that's like she's like a robot. But I said, "Are you having a bad day?" And she stopped and she looked at me and she said, "No, why?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, you just seem like maybe like something's going on. I hope that it's not, because, you know, if it is, maybe you just need to take a break or take a breath or something." And she realized what I was talking about. Yeah, I could tell by her body language. And she said, "Thank you for noticing." So that was sort of the end of it. And she said, "Have a
Yeah.
nice day," and all those things. But I just wanted to stop her to maybe make her realize, what she had done. And just it's kindness costs nothing, for heaven's sakes.
Mhm.
you know and you
Exactly.
got to remember, you don't know what's going on in somebody behind their front door. You don't know if their dog just passed away, or you don't
Mhm.
know whether or not they just had an argument with their 7-year old.
It happens. That's
So
right.
just be kind. It's so worth it. It really is.
Right. I love that. So, before we close up today, I just want to take a minute to talk about creative processing. Are you familiar with creative processing? With my definition of creative processing, I should say?
What I want to say, I feel like I am a bit, but really spell it out for me, because
Okay.
I mean, the whole word processing I love.
It's
And
important.
I know you're so artistic, so that's how I'm feeling it.
Okay, so creative processing is a tool that we can all use to activate our creative minds to process through a certain intention. So, using a simple prompt like the purpose of fill in the blank of your creative outlet is to process whatever your intention is. And in the pre-show notes, you shared with me that, or you shared that waking up early and walking outdoors is how you do creative processing. So I just wanted to frame this in a way that makes it a little bit more understandable as part of that prompt. So a prompt that you could use would be: the purpose of this walk is to process my marriage, my friendship, or supporting a certain person who could use maybe some extra guidance in that season. So it's really putting the intention as that key part, so that that processing method, however you're engaging your creative mind. And also another way that you mentioned just through this podcast is interior design, which could just be rearranging furniture for the day. We don't need all the pretty frou-frou-y terms. The point is that we activate our creative minds all the time. But when we set a certain intention to it, it makes it a powerful, life-changing tool that then we can carry into the rest of our lives. And it creates space for freedom, for peace, for clarity, for joy, for being present. We get caught up in not being present with where we're at because we're thinking about the future, which usually ends up with us being anxious, or we're thinking about something that happened in the past, and that usually brings up depression. But creative processing is a way to check in with yourself right where you're at, being intentional with the ways that you're creating currently in your life, and then using that to narrow down, this is my intention. For me, just a couple of days ago, when I do my planning for the week, I have to do it in a physical journal, or in a physical planner, because that's how I best activate my creative mind to process the certain intention, which for me on Sunday was a busy week, a full week ahead. I need to process that intention in entirety so that I can live presently in each and every single day. So my favorite part of creative processing is that we all already do it. And we just don't realize yet the power of setting a clear intention to accompany how you're already choosing to create. So,
I
yeah,
love
that's
that.
my little soapbox about creative processing.
No, I love that because, I walk, I mean, I'll say for sure 5 days a week after I go to the gym and do my thing. I come home, I grab my dog Sophie, and I walk with one or two neighbors or the three of us. And we always joke about we are starting our day and solving all the problems of the world.
Yes.
So rather than solving all the problems of the world now, because I basically walk to their house, I think it would be great for me to intentionally be saying to myself, okay, on the walk today, and tomorrow I'll be walking with Sandy, my intention is to whatever that
Fill
is,
in the blank. You get
fill
to
in the
choose
blank.
that. And the cool part about creative processing too is that you can bring other people into it. I've had the most powerful creative processing sessions. That's what I call them now, just because when you know better, you do better. When you have that word, you can actually engage it as a skill. But some of the most powerful creative processing times that I've had have been with friends, where we're like, nope, this is what I need to work through. And sometimes it's just like, it's a way for me to ask, like, hey, I really need your support. I need you to show up for me because I'm walking through a custody battle, or I'm walking through, whatever that one certain thing is that's really weighing on me. And it gives them an opportunity to be like, okay, we're having a focused conversation that's intentional. And the best, one of my favorite things is to kind of put a time limit on it too, so that, we're not like feeling weighed down by it. We're not spending hours and hours talking about something that might not be leading to joy and freedom, but you're putting a certain time limit on just that one certain intention. You can be poured into, you can pour into other people, and then you can keep moving on with your life and your friendship and your business and your day. But you feel a sense of relief. Just psychologically, slowing down is so important. And we live full lives. We all do. We live really full lives. And we have to create times and space where we're checking in with our subconscious. If we're not checking in with our subconscious, then we're living on autopilot. That's
Right.
not healthy for anyone.
I love that. Thank you for that.
Yes, of course. Well, do you want to tell us anything about what's coming up next for you? Anything exciting happening in 2023?
Yes. You know what? I love the start of a new year. I mean, I've already been like, since starting November, I started to think about, okay, what does 2023 look like for me? What does it look like for Mark and I? I love to take a look and really break down my first 90 days, personally and professionally. I love fresh starts. I love setting goals, right? So, there's always a health goal, there's always a financial goal, business goal. And this past year, I've really been working on growing my skill set for my business and kind of expanding that. And so I feel like I have a good chunk of that under my belt, so to speak, and I'm off and running with it. So now it's like, okay, so what's the next part? And so now that I have a clear understanding of that, I'm mentoring a group of ladies, and we've all had discussions together of if they think that's a fit for them. And for the first 90 days, 5 days a week, we're spending an hour together,
Wow.
working a plan where I can be giving them feedback, but we have accountability. I love accountability. A lot of people
Yeah.
run from it, but I love it. And very few people seem to want to hold me to be accountable to things. So for me, even though it's people I'm mentoring, of course, I'm never going to let them down, Danielle, right?
Yeah.
So I have to show up and be my best. And so I'm really excited for January 1st. And then January 7th, we have, I know I was sharing with you a big launch for our business. And it's going to change people's lives next year. So I'm kind of just getting myself all my ducks in a row, making sure I always, the beginning of every day is for me. It's for what I need to do for Myrna. And then usually about this time of day, actually, I grab Sophie and Mark and I would go for a little walk. And I'm just really looking forward to that. And I'm going to learn breath work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's,
I love a good breathwork session.
yeah, I don't do it enough.
Yeah.
Like I
We
need
need to breathe. We all need to breathe.
breathe.
Yeah.
So that's part of it as well. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to figuring out and learning how to apply that to my schedule. And scheduling,
Yes.
I guess, is the bottom line, right? Dang it.
Right. Make it happen.
Make it happen.
Well, Myrna, it was such a joy to have this conversation with you today. I will have your LinkedIn in the show notes so listeners can connect with you, reach out to you, ask you any questions, get to know more about you. Truly, you guys, if you are looking for a way to make some additional income, to have a mentor, to connect with an incredible community of people, I really encourage you to reach out to Myrna. She and her husband, Mark, have been great friends to my husband and I, even just in these last couple of months. So definitely reach out to her on LinkedIn. And I am so, so grateful to have spent some time with you here today and for your courage and vulnerability to share your story. Please keep connecting, loving, and guiding others towards the life of abundance that they are created to live. You, my friend, are created worthy. Thanks for tuning in to the Created Worthy podcast. If anything in today's show resonated with you, can you do me a huge favor and go leave a 5-star review? This helps more listeners find the show, and it also expands the impact, messages, and stories that are shared here. All the links and guest information are in the show notes. If you're on social media, I want to personally invite you to continue the conversations about these important topics that we're talking about. You can find Created Worthy on both Instagram and Facebook by just typing in Created Worthy Podcast. Can't wait to talk to you soon, friend. And don't forget, you are created worthy.